Good morning.
I don't hear it. Is it on?
Good morning. That's good. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to Plan RVA Day. Officially, this is a joint annual meeting of Plan RVA, the Central Virginia Transportation Authority, and the TPO. So we're thankful that you are all here. This meeting has been called to order. I'd like to thank, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody in the room who decided to be here today. We're very grateful, but I need a special, who said that, by the way? Who was that? Was it Winslow? And I also wanted to recognize, right. So now for some more important people than Mr. Winslow, I'd like to welcome Chair Lumpkins, Chair Carroll, Secretary Miller. I know may be here. I haven't seen him yet, but we certainly welcome him. And we want to say, as a Hampton-Sydney graduate that I know he is, we want to say go Jackets, and RMC did really well this year. Also want to thank all the sponsors. If you take a look at some of the promotional material that we put out, we being Plan RVA and this joint body, the sponsors that we have here that allowed this to happen, made this happen, we are very, very grateful. Some of those were phone calls, some of them were quick emails, some of them were just pull-ups, even in different cities. And before I could get the question out of my mouth, or Martha could state the question, sponsorships came in fast and furious, and we're very thankful for that. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce our executive director, which I believe is the best executive director of any organization in the region, Ms. Martha Schickel. Thank you.
Yeah. Boy, what a welcome. So nice. You guys know that I write what he says, right? Well, I'm really glad that everyone's here today. Thank you all again for, excuse me. Thank you all again for being here and taking time out of your morning. Just wanted to do a little bit of level setting. This is our second joint annual meeting, and we're just so pleased to be able to have these three regional bodies come together. So much crossover in membership, and that's why many of you have very long ribbons on your name tags. So thank you all for your service on these three organizations. This event was conceptualized by committee last year, really to be able to promote coordination and communication across the three organizations. And so we're happy today to be able to be here the second time in a row and to be able to celebrate the accomplishments of the three organizations and the work that we do in the Central Virginia region. I'm stalling a moment because I want to make sure that our introduction is here.
Good. So in the stalling, because my agenda is very full, I forgot to introduce Chair Lumpkins to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So great intro,
thank
Martha.
Thank you.
You see how this coordination works?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
Thank you. So I'm very, very pleased to invite Bill Leidy to come up and join our chairs on the stage here. I had the honor of meeting him a while ago, we'll say. But Bill Leidy, if you don't know him, has served a distinguished public service career working in various capacities with 12 governors of the Commonwealth. He's a proud graduate of the University of Mary Washington, faithful member of the United States Marine Corps, husband to Marty, father to Matt, I should have been ready for that, father to Matt, and mentor to countless public officials, servants, and students. Bill's a steadfast champion for Richmond, the Commonwealth, and our government. I had the pleasure of meeting him back in 2011 when I was a brand new Planning District Commission Executive Director, and he was leading a consulting gig for our state association. You remember that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He was assisting us with our strategic planning and really helping us to think about how our organization could become more relevant to the Commonwealth and to the communities that we serve. It's been an honor learning from him, and I'm really glad that we have him here today. If you know him, you know that he's a wealth of really amazing stories and lessons, and we're really grateful that he put a few of them down on paper in his newly released book. Um, and so, Bill, I'm going to hand the program over to you and ask you that you guide our chairs through a conversation talking about regional collaboration and that evolution in the Commonwealth, but also in the Richmond region.
Thank you, Martha. Appreciate the introduction. And good morning, everybody.
Morning.
It is an honor to be with you all this morning. The role of PDCs and regional commissions in the Commonwealth of Virginia are vastly underutilized and certainly underappreciated by, I would say, most senior executives in Virginia state government. I have been a champion of PDCs for my entire career, but it hasn't helped as much as I would like to have seen it help over the years. But I have constantly used the refrain that for far too long, Virginia state government, the chief executive, the General Assembly, and the agency heads have viewed local government as special interest groups rather than full partners in the delivery of citizen services to our people in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I firmly believe that, and I believe that in addition to the lack of utilization of the full power of local government in delivering services to the citizens, we also have failed to provide at the state level the proper incentives to encourage regional cooperation. I will say, however, I'm just going to do a few introductory remarks, Martha. I'm sorry, but I have to. Just a few things to say. My observation, again, after my 4 decades of service to the Commonwealth of Virginia, center largely around the fact that our citizens, largely, quite frankly, because of the way we are portrayed as government in the press, believe we're all screwed up. And they fail to realize all of the amazingly good things that are happening in the Commonwealth of Virginia with the programs and delivery of services. One of those things that people often decry is we need more regionalism. We need more regionalism. Well, who doesn't like regionalism? What they don't realize is how much regionalism is actually already taking place, which is what is going to be discussed with this panel here this morning. The regional cooperation, I shouldn't say regionalism, that's not the right word. Regional cooperation is the better word. The amount of regional cooperation that takes place is fairly phenomenal. You know, I recall when I was working with Buckingham Palace to arrange the Queen's visit to come to Virginia, and they called and they said, you know, it would please the Queen to make Richmond, Virginia the first stop on her trip to the United States. She'll be arriving at Richmond International Airport. A regional cooperation operation that goes very well. Now, at that particular time, Lane Ramsey had just announced his retirement, and I was stretching to try to figure out what kind of going away present I could give Lane. And so I thought, well, wait a minute, I know. So I invited Lane, Rue Harris, and Virgil Hazlett and their respective chairs to be the official greeting party for the Queen when she got off the plane when she arrived at the airport. Now, the mayor, Doug Wilder, would be having a much larger role with the Queen later on Capitol Square, but this was my way of showing some regional support to the area for the regionally operated Capital Region Airport Commission. I am a City of Richmond resident. I get my water from Chesterfield County through the city, and there are all sorts of cooperative agreements in water and gas and utilities that the citizens have no knowledge whatsoever of. So the point I'm trying to make is that while the press may portray us as not cooperating on things that they see that we should be cooperating more fully, there is a breadth and scope of cooperation regionally that it goes unheralded. And so with that, I'd like to kind of talk a little bit to each of our very distinguished chairs. And I will say that I did bring a copy of my book, and I only brought one copy, so I'm going to give that to my Marine buddy here, Sean. And please realize as you read the chapter called Tell It to the Marines about my Marine Corps service, that I wasn't the most reverent of all Marines. And so take it with a grain of salt. But I'd like to talk to our panel here this morning and start with some very general questions as you all give your thoughts to your remarks. Particularly, what took you by the most surprise when you joined your respective bodies where you're chairing now in terms of transportation and the TPO and the commission itself? What was the biggest surprise you had when you first began representing your jurisdiction on these regional bodies? And what are some of the highlights from the past year do you think about when you think about your experience as the chair of your respective organizations? So
Thank you, Bill. And I'm glad you reinforced some of the things that I've been talking with Martha about over the last 9 months as it relates to the Marine Corps. She enjoys Marine Corps stories immensely. She always tells me she does. So I have a little bit of a unique background because I first came on the TPO a number of years ago, over a decade ago. Frank Thornton, Pat O'Bannon were in that very first meeting. And so I was an alternate for the PDC. And then coming on to the PDC during this election cycle, I had some background, some familiarity. The thing that struck me with Plan RVA when I really dove in back in 2020 was the depth and the breadth of the organization and how many areas this organization touches, but not just a light touch here or a light touch there, just how deep the organization goes. And the foundation of this organization is very strong. And I think that's because we have a very strong board. We have great folks who participate. We have folks who seek out this organization. I was really surprised at how many people in other governments, our member partners, reach out to us because they know that we have a strong foundation. Oftentimes you get organizations that touch many areas and it's kind of like a house of cards. We're the farthest thing from a house of cards, I can assure you. And so I was pleased to see that, but I was also extremely impressed with the dedication of the member group that we represent, how much they put into it and how much we mean to each of the localities and some of the initiatives and some of our stakeholders. It was monumental to me when I first came on to the PDC.
thank you.
Well,
Please.
piggybacking on what you said,
Last.
my background is I was first got into politics in 2011 when Goochland had its clean sweep revolution, as we call it, and I was elected on the school board. And so I was appointed to the Board of Supervisors in early 2018. And I had the impression when I was jumped right onto the TPO as Goochland's representative, and I went into it thinking, well, there's not a lot of regional cooperation taking place, probably a victim of the media that you described, as they don't acknowledge the cooperation. So I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, I knew there was cooperation because, like you said, you get your water from Chesterfield and Goochland. We get our water from Henrico, and there's a lot of cooperation in the region that I was aware of. And on this, even on the school board, I saw a cooperation in the region. But so I was pleasantly surprised. And to Sean's point, the depth of the cooperation is pleasing. Now, I've wondered when CVTA first was adopted and passed, I know they were saying, oh, that this, we hate a new tax, but this will foster regional cooperation. And so I was like, well, let's see, is it just going to be jurisdictions fighting over another pool of money, or is it going to be cooperation? And my year as chair has, and it goes it's a compliment to the people that represent the jurisdictions in this county. It's been a lot of cooperation, and I'm pleasantly surprised. And I think the people here that pay attention to what's happening in the region know that the region needs us to cooperate in order to be successful. We won't be a successful region unless we cooperate. And so I've been pleasantly surprised at the depth of the cooperation and the fact that it exists, I guess, at first, but then the depth of it is pleasing.
And Kevin?
Well, I got thrown into the deep end. So
Yeah.
when I got on, that was not just one, not just the TPO, not just Plan RVA, but then also the creation of the CVTA. And one of the things that I thought was very enlightening is when you look at the different jurisdictions that are part of Planning District 15 and all of the representatives, which many of them are in this room today, that represent all the different jurisdictions. Certainly, we've all been elected by in our individual districts and our individual communities to represent the interest of our people. But there has to be a bigger picture that needs to be looked at from a regional standpoint, especially when it comes to transportation, because we may have an issue in Chesterfield County and the western part of Hull Street with a population growth, but a lot of those people actually work in Henrico and in Goochland. And so when you look at how they're getting to and from work, well, yeah, as they travel up 288 North, as an example, and they go through Chesterfield and then they hit Powhatan and then they hit Goochland and hit Henrico, you have to understand that whole regional picture when you talk about transportation. And so one of the things that's been incredible for me, quite frankly, is getting to know the other people in the room that are part of not just the elected bodies, but also the staff and the staff at Plan RVA, and be able to sit down and have a conversation about what's actually happening in the region and how we actually going to solve these issues. And those conversations take place. One of the things I think we have strived to do better on in the last couple of years is actually getting the message out to the community. I think there are a lot of people that do pay attention in each community about what the different organizations are doing here, but getting it out to the masses so that people who live in our districts understand that what's actually going on and how well people are working together. I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, we passed a $276 million regional transportation package, but I got to tell you, and she's sitting out here in the audience, right? So Patricia Page was a huge voice for New Kent, for the region to get cooperation together and with the state to widen 64. And so having everybody at the table, willing to listen, willing to work together and understand the value of what each transportation project will be for each jurisdiction, whether it be for benefiting Richmond or whether it be benefiting Henrico or Chesterfield or New Kent or Charles City County. And that particular product is going to benefit New Kent and Charles City County and Richmond tremendously, the whole region. And so getting everybody together in the room and then getting the word out to the community, I think is where we need to do a little bit better. But the people in the room are amazing, and their ability to work together and have frank conversations and solve problems, it's just tremendous.
I'll add, when I joined the TPO, one thing that impressed me, I won't say surprised, but impressed me, was Mrs. Page's insistence every meeting. I learned all about what was going on in New Kent and 64 widening. So consistent advocacy for her jurisdiction and for her region, and it's been fun to watch from years ago when you were standing at the meeting every month, reminding us that there was a need on that 64, and it's been neat to see it take off in the last couple of years. And
Well, I'd go, building on something that Kevin said about the connectiveness and looking around the room. I'm just amazed looking at this room at just how many of you all I'm connected with in one way or another. Pat's husband saved my brain when I had a stroke. Marine Corps service together as well. We're not just, and you all have been in elected positions, all of you, for a very long time. And will continue to serve, I assume, in an elected position here shortly in other capacities. But we are connected. And as Sean's former constituent, Patrick Henry, who I knew actually, would often say, we must hang together or surely we shall hang separately. And so there, I'm going to tell another real quick story. I don't want to monopolize, but I want to tell a real quick story. I was serving as the Deputy Secretary of Transportation and under Governor Belials. That's a long time ago. And the city of Newport News and the city of Hampton were fighting over the location of the Hampton Newport News connector, long since built. And of course, Newport News wanted it here and Hampton wanted it here, and it wasn't going to connect if they were going that way. Governor Blouse called me into the office and said, Leidy, go down there and fix this. We need to get this road built. So I called the resident engineer in and I said, Denny, you know this community better than I do. Let's go down there and facilitate a meeting and get this resolved. And he said, okay. So we went down there, and on the way down, Denny said, you know, I'm not so sure I want them to resolve this. And I said, well, what do you mean, Denny? And he said, well, this is state government perspective here. State government saying, I'm not sure I want the local governments to resolve this. And I said, what do you mean, Denny? He said, well, as long as they keep fighting, I get to put it where I want it. Okay. And so I've told that story many times, and I tell it from the perspective of the more powerful you are, and you are a very powerful group, the more you hang together, the better chance you have of having your will on behalf of your individually elected citizens prevail than waiting for the state bureaucracy to make the decision on your behalf. So, I want to move on just a little bit and ask each of you all to talk a little bit about two things, really. One is what you're proudest of in your service as chairs, respective chairs, over the last year, and perhaps even speak a little bit about unfinished business, what you'd like to see continue to happen in your respective organizations.
Yeah, Bill, and that's a great story because it's so true what you said, you know. And of course, with our background, we sometimes believe in it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. And as local government, sometimes I think we have to do that. Did I hear? Somebody agrees with us. That's is that
Calling us to order.
somebody's probably gonna.
Someone's locked out.
Could be we
I
must
thought
have
that
said
was-
some great things. That could be like Martin Luther
I thought that was your tail wagging, getting all excited.
yeah. So, you know, Mr. Secretary, welcome. Thank you for being here. I just made a comment earlier, go Jackets, recognizing that you did graduate from Hampton-Sydney and we're a Jacket family, so. It is on the other side of the tracks. There's no question about it. You know, Bill, my distinguished colleagues have brought this up. Plan RVA believes in mutuality, and I know that every organization does. And I think the interesting thing is that we've talked about specific people in this room and people who've come before us and the kind of the shoulders that we stand on. But mutuality means something because it helps us with deliverables. And we have talked about this with our board. We've talked about it with our staff and our senior leadership. Mutuality is something that not only we believe in, but we have to execute every day. And I've talked about this as chair. I guess to answer that question is, our job is not just to plan and tell folks, hey, this is something that we could do. We have to have deliverables to send back either to those home localities for the individuals here. That they have things that need to be done, important projects, important initiatives. So we have to focus on mutuality. I think as chair, one of the initiatives that I really wanted to focus on, working with Martha and her team and the entire board, the board's directive to me as chair was very clear, and that is every day we have to get up and we have to take things off the list. We have to deliver. And I know this at my core now. Plan RVA is uniquely positioned and qualified to make sure that we are delivering. But that couldn't be done without, again, the mutuality that is part of our culture. Unfinished business, I think it's important that when you leave a particular position that you do have unfinished business, because my belief is if you don't have something that isn't completed yet, then you probably weren't pushing yourself hard enough to look for ways to progress. And Martha said this, and I give her the credit. She said, you know, as the region has evolved, this organization has evolved. And I think that's a really good way to kind of sum up that we have to every day wake up and say, what is it that each individual locality is going to need? What are they going to require? And how do we make sure it gets there? So unfinished business, I could probably sit here for a half an hour and talk about the things that I'd like to see take place over the next year, the next 10 years, or maybe even the next 20 years. But the reality is that a lot of the things that we have delivered, folks have been happy with. There are things that are in the works now from board initiatives that we will put in place, shortly. And that's exciting.
Thanks, Sean. John?
On the TPO, it's a small thing, but it worked out well for me. My first meeting last year, I decided these meetings can go long already, and I was a little wary of adding something to the meeting agenda, but I did put in a 5 to 10 minute section at the beginning of the meetings where we would hear from a jurisdiction. And I remember like it was yesterday, Charles City was the first one up, and Mr. Adkins brought in a slideshow, and I was looking at my fellow board members, and I was like, are they going to be mad at me for taking 10 more minutes of their morning? And I was really relieved when afterwards, even my colleague Susan Lascalette, who I was afraid of the most, so she said, she goes, I had no idea all that was happening in Charles City. And that was encouraging. And, sometimes that 5 to 10 minutes went a little longer, but we learned a lot about what was happening in the other jurisdictions. And even today, somebody had complimented me on that ended up being good. And that was part of the regional piece. So that's a small thing, but on a bigger scale, I think our transportation forum earlier this year was a success. And going back to one of the things that I heard when I first got on the TPO was the challenge of, and it's been mentioned already, the getting our message out, letting community know what these organizations do. And there's a lot of talk about options and ideas, but I think this meeting today, our transportation forum in March, and the chairs, we've gotten together a couple of times, not as much. I think unfinished business would be for the next chairs to make it a point to meet regularly and coordinate. So that's the other unfinished business piece that I think exists specific to the TPO is to do a better job of getting input from the community. And I think we've set that up just at our last meeting. We have a group called CTAC, and there's a bunch of different interest groups that sit on CTAC, and they like for bicyclists and other organizations. And as a planning organization, I think we need to work hard at really reactivating our engagement with the community TAC and getting input from the citizens and the different interest groups.
Thank you. Kevin?
Sure. Well, we'll talk about accomplishments first. We were part of the organization from the inception, created by the General Assembly and the regional group to get the CVTA off the ground. And, first project that we looked at under Frank Thornton's leadership when he was our chair for 2 years was the Fall Line Trail. And so getting the Fall Line Trail funded was very important. But one of the other things that was important is that the other jurisdictions that were not affected by the Fall Line Trail, this body worked together to make sure that the funds that came to the CVTA from those jurisdictions were put back to those jurisdictions for transportation projects, so that it's fair that the 5 jurisdictions that the Fall Line touches would get funding, but also those other localities would get fundings that were not part of the Fall Line Trail. And then go back to what we passed last year, the $276 million transportation package with another $100 million on top of it for the 64 Winding Project. We had conversations with the secretary. We actually worked with the governor's office and members of the General Assembly who made sure that there was funding set aside in the budget to fund that project, to get it off the ground. One of the things that I did as chair that I felt that we could do better is get the word out to the community. And so we actually did, we went to every single jurisdiction. The last one we have left is Goochland coming up, and actually did a presentation, myself and Chet Parsons, to the communities to let them know what the CVTA is actually doing, how their money is being spent, both on the local level that the CVTA dollars are coming into, and then what the regional pot looks like, and what GRTC is actually now able to do to provide services from a regional transportation standpoint. Moving forward, what I think we need to continue with as we move forward is, we actually put a list of projects out there to get funded. Now we got to build them, right? And so what we need to do in the future is we need to work with the localities to make sure that these projects do get fully funded, whether it's through a resubmission through Smart Scale or if we do a pay-go. We have the ability to issue bonds through the CVTA, and that's something we're looking at through our financial advisor to determine where in the future would be appropriate to issue debt to pay for some of these projects. But the big deliverable is we got to build them, right? And so if you look at what the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority has done, or the Hampton Road Transportation Authority, Hampton Roads gets like $200 million a year, and they've turned it into $6.2 billion in projects that they're funding. And we're taking the baby steps and moving forward to get us where we need to be. But now we got to make sure that we get these projects built, because that's really the full deliverable to the community, is to say, your tax dollars that have been taken are being used for these, and hopefully the localities who are actually getting those local dollars already are actually pushing that out to the community and say, look, by the way, the CVTA dollars, these are the projects we're fixing. And we highlighted some tremendous projects that each locality has used their local CVTA dollars for. So we just need to keep going in the future with what we've put in place, and I think it's going to happen.
Thank you. Well, Kevin, you certainly jumped into the middle of it with the coming chair at the creation of the CVTA, but I think you've done a really well planned job in doing all of that, and certainly has got us on firm ground moving forward.
We had a good team, right? So everybody who was put on that, things happen for a reason in life, and everybody that was put in that team that came and worked together regionally has been just unbelievable.
And Bill, can I echo
Please.
that? I think that's important, and I know we as the chairs have spoken about that. And I was speaking with a county executive yesterday on this very thing. The team aspect is very important. It makes the job easier, I think, as a chair when you have a board who is engaged, and each of us do. When you have folks who are familiar with the issues, that are engaged on the issues, that are not passive but active, and a lot of that credit goes to the folks who sit on these boards and these commissions, because it's not a one-person show. They're not only here for meetings, but they're there taking phone calls. They're on site working on projects where they need to be, and it happens with a substantial group of people that, to your point earlier, I don't think sometimes the general public or the media recognizes exactly what takes place in the amount of effort that goes into by the individuals to come together. And I want to give a lot of credit, particularly to these three organizations, for the dedication, years of dedication for each of the members who have served selflessly, because it requires a lot of time and effort to be here, to go to meetings, to work on budgets, to work on projects, to work with the legislature. It requires a lot, and the execution by the individuals is just, it's phenomenal. It really is.
Well, I think, the team, and while you've got an amazing staff, and I will have to say, Martha has really done an outstanding job here from my perspective. I've worked now over 40 years with planning district commissions, and I've seen what she's been able to accomplish here. It's pretty phenomenal. But in addition to the staff, it starts with the leadership, with you all as chairs. And there are very few, and talk about one of the unheralded aspects of the MPO, the TPO, CVTA, and Plan RVA, is the cordiality in which you all rotate chairs and rotate positions. That starts really within your localities. I've noted that in all your localities, member localities, there is, this wonderful agreement to rotate your leadership positions over time. That then leads to your willingness to rotate positions on these respective organizations as well. Can you imagine going up the hill here to the General Assembly and saying to the chairman of the Courts of Justice Committee, hey, you had a good chance this year, why don't I do it next year? Let's just take turns. That just doesn't happen. And it's a remarkable component of what makes this process successful, because you know that you have to help this person because next year they may be the chair and they're going to need your help. And so you all create a camaraderie of leadership that is hard to beat.
Oh, can I add something to that?
Yes, please.
That's absolutely right on the regional level, but I have to tell you, I have to give a shout out, and they're not paying me for this, but I have to give a shout out to both Chris Winslow and Jim Holland, okay? Because the way the CVTA chair, the way the representation is for each community, it's either the chair or a designee that actually serves on the CVTA. And Leslie, when she was chair, put me in the position to serve as Chesterfield's representative for CVTA. And when Chris and Jim came in as chair, they easily could have said, well, okay, someone else is going to do it. And they didn't. They said, we have faith in what you're doing and we're going to leave you in that role. And so I applaud both of them for, again, affording me the opportunity to represent Chesterfield County on the CVTA, because they could have changed it. And so I thank you publicly for that. Truth is the truth, man.
I want to give you just one last question to address, which is, so having all this discussion, so what are you going to put in the envelope you leave for the next chair of what they need to really put on top of things?
So I've always liked this story, but I've told folks this, particularly being a Marine, right?
Hoorah.
That should anything.
You notice the date on the calendar over here on the wall?
Did you notice it?
Yeah.
Ms. Schickel, did I tell you that anybody who walked in this room, so to be clear, we did the mural and we met with the artist who was doing the mural, and I wanted a calendar and a couple of other things. So for any Marine in the room that is present, they will notice the date on that calendar is November 10th, which is the founding of the finest fighting forces world's ever known. And I told Martha, I said, any Marine at some point as the years go on that comes in here will see that calendar. And then, so I've always said this, should anything happen with our reputation as Marines, just blame everything on us. And people would believe that. And so you wrote, when the indictments come down and all that, it's probably the Marine who actually, was drunk in the bar fighting or whatever it may be, right? But I guess the first thing is anything that's messed up, use that executive privilege to say, and I mean this. Boy, Davis just didn't finish that. He messed that up. I can do a lot better. But the note that I truly would leave is, I'm here if you need me. You and I both know how that works from a military standpoint and even a corporate standpoint. When you step away, you do have to create some daylight. I'm here in a very passive capacity should you need me. If you need anything, background, I can be in an active capacity. But a lot of those notes that you see, particularly I think with presidents and governors and things like that, to your point earlier, they haven't worked together before. So here, sometimes the note could be metaphorically on a napkin and passed to the person who you've been working with for a number of years. And they know, they have your cell phone, they have your email, they have your home number. And so I think the idea is, if we've trusted you to place you in a leadership position, as I walk out the door, I want you to know, I've got your back all the time. And that's what we do. We take up for our people. And so when it comes in and leadership challenges become burdensome, just know that should you need to call in any help, that we're here to help. That would be my message to any incoming chair.
Thank you. Kevin, I'm going to jump on you since I put you last on every other question, so apologize for that.
I mean, what he said is spot on. We've been working together as an organization, and the communication between the members has been extraordinary. And they have known that, certainly if they had a question about anything, they just pick up the phone and call. And I've oftentimes called some of them and said, hey, what do you think about this? And so the incumbent chair, whoever it may be, we've already been working together well for the last 3 years. And so I would just essentially say the same thing. Look, I'm right here. I'm only a phone call away. anything you need to do to help. And again, none of us are perfect. And so if there is something that was unfinished, I'll apologize ahead of time and let's get it done.
John?
Again, yeah, we do work together. So I think we've already set it up at our last meeting. We know what we have left to do on the TPO side. We've got, again, I touched on it earlier, improving our gathering of community input. We've made some good strides. Another thing I'm proud of on the TPO this past year, some good strides towards putting in some accountability and monitoring of cost overruns, which have been difficult and terrible to see. When you look at the numbers, some of these cost overruns have been painful. New money that we get with no new projects, it's all going to, fund the gaps in existing projects. And I think, again, like my colleague said here, we'll be here to continue support. I think the continuity is going to be kind of smooth with the transitions. But the unfinished business is continued community engagement, cooperation among the three organizations, or continued, cooperation, and then let's keep our eye on the cost overruns and continue to work to manage that. And I think we didn't talk about it at all, but safety continues to challenge the region, and so I hope the planning component of that, we've been engaged on that. Obviously, you can plan, then you need to execute. But with these organizations and with VDOT, who's becoming a good partner, in my view, on things, safety is an issue that we need to continue to focus on.
Well, thank you all.
Was this the last question?
It was.
So actually, I have a special presentation that I'd like to play.
Well,
for you.
I was just getting ready to introduce that.
Okay.
So we have, that's the end of the Q&A portion of this. Chesterfield has prepared a short presentation to wow us all.
I don't know about that, but it's going to be nice. Difficulties. It worked during the test.
Here we go.
Hi, I'm Kevin Carroll, Chair of the Chesterfield County Board of Supervisors and Chair of the Central Virginia Transportation Authority. Since the General Assembly created the CVTA in 2020, we have sought to fulfill its mission to identify and fund priority transportation investments across the region, which comprises the 9 localities included in Planning District 15. I'm very proud about what the CVTA is accomplishing for the region. Thanks to the stewardship of this group, several projects are in the pipeline. All of these projects will get funded thanks to the work of the CVTA. Otherwise, it would have been left waiting for state or federal resources. We're making big changes that are going to benefit a lot of people. We're also demonstrating how cooperation is getting things done for the region. Allow me to share with you just a few examples. One of the biggest projects on our list is widening Interstate 64 along a 29-mile gap between exit 205 in New Kent County and exit 234 in James City County. The CVTA has committed to funding $100 million of the project, which will begin construction later this year with an expected completion in 2027. In the city of Richmond, the Mayo Bridge replacement projects, which will cost a projected $90 million, is possible thanks to the CVTA leveraging $5 million to make it happen. In Hanover County, improvements to the Route 1, Route 30 intersection will provide necessary safety improvements to all involved. And in the town of Ashland, the CVTA is leveraging $4.6 million to help complete and compete for a $32 million federal grant to construct a rail overpass at the Vaughn Road intersection, providing for vital safety connections for school and public safety infrastructure. Over in Henrico, the CVTA is looking to fund a project that will convert right turn lanes along westbound US 250 or West Broad Street to a continuous share through right lane from Tom Leonard Drive to Pontchartrain Road. The $3 million in CVTA regional funds helped to secure $23 million in state smart scale dollars. The CVTA funding will allow development of the project to begin this year with construction anticipated in 2027. Meanwhile, on Route 288 in both Powhatan and Goochland counties, the CVTA is using $8 million to match investment from the state to reconstruct the shoulder on the northbound side from the Route 711 on-ramp to the Route 6 off-ramp to create an extra travel lane with appropriate overhead signage during peak morning travel hours. Here in Chesterfield County, $37.5 million in CVTA dollars are being used along with state and local funding to extend Woolridge Road from Old Hunter Road North to Route 288. The extension will be 4 lanes with a median, a trail, and a sidewalk. A roundabout will be installed at the Old Hunter intersection and a traffic signal at the Route 288 intersection. Construction is planned for 2024. Lastly, we're using $750,000 in CVTA funding to begin preliminary engineering and help secure state funding through the Smart Scale process for the Route 360 widening project from Wood Lake to Otterdare Road. The project will be resubmitted for Smart Scale funding consideration in the fall of 2024. The CVTA originally programmed $20 million towards this project when we passed our regional transportation package that was part of a $276 million package that was passed. For folks dealing with significant traffic congestion along 64 on the way to and from the eastern part of the state, or for those in Short Pump and on 288, or in Richmond or Chesterfield, projects like these will make a meaningful difference. It's exactly why the CVTA exists and why we're so excited about the impact this new tool is having on transportation throughout the region. It has been an honor to serve the region and the CVTA these last 3 years, 2 as vice chair and this past year as chair. Regional cooperation is important to all of us here in Central Virginia, and it's never been more vital. What we've been building here with the CVTA has never been done before, and it's with one goal in mind, helping to accelerate the ability to fix transportation in Central Virginia. The members of the CVTA, the Central Virginia Transportation Authority, are devoted to this work, and we're committed to using your tax dollars wisely to fix your roads.
One last round of applause for their leadership over the year.
Thank you all so much. That was fantastic. Really appreciate your comments, and what a great kickoff to the morning, right? I don't think that my job is a hard one right now. I don't know that anybody in the room needs an introduction to Chet Parsons, but I'll ask you to come up, Chet, and transition to our next session. Chet, as you all know, is the Director of Transportation for Plan RVA, but he also has been serving as, in that capacity, he's the Secretary to the RRTPO, but also for the last 3 years has been serving as the Interim Executive Director for CVTA. So thank you, Chet, in front of everyone here for everything that you've been doing behind the scenes to make these organizations operate the way that they have. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Martha. Good morning, everybody. I am excited to be up here, and as you can see, we've been busy. So part of the meaning of today is to celebrate a lot of that success that we've seen and the hard work that's gone in. Hearing the chairs of our 3 organizations this morning has been really insightful to all the work and cooperation that they've done. I get to introduce our next guest now to kind of piggyback on that success and share a state perspective on what's going on. Shepard Miller was appointed as the Secretary of Transportation by Governor Glenn Youngkin in January of 2022. He was appointed to the Commonwealth Transportation Board in June 2018 after serving from 2011 to 2014 previously. He also serves as the Commonwealth as a member of the Virginia House Ethics Advisory Council. He's a native and lifelong resident of Norfolk, and we have enjoyed watching the success of the Tidewater as we start to think about being competitive in our region. I wanted to welcome him to the stage and just say that we are excited about the outcomes of the last round of Smart Scale. That's fresh off the decision tree last week, I believe, and looking forward to hearing some insights from the secretary. So, thank you very much.
Hey, listen, appreciate it, Chet, very much, and Martha Schickel for having me here today. I'm going to go off script for a couple seconds because I was really interested in the discussion up here. I think we got a new law firm. It's Leidy, Lumpkins, Carroll, and Davis. I think it could work well, or maybe just a consulting firm. Let's not. But in any case, as Chet said, I'm a Hampton Roads guy. Grew up in Norfolk. Have always lived in Norfolk, literally, in the same neighborhood. So, my wife's from Richmond, so I've got a little bit of Richmond love, and spent a lot of time up here, in my 20s and 30s, and in-laws on Cary Street Road. So I know Richmond area fairly well. But let me take you back 65 years when I was born. So 1957, I was born in September. They had just completed the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. Before that, it was a ferry. And you went and got on the car ferry and you rode across and paid your fee, and you went to Hampton. So just imagine getting on a ferry today to go across that river. So that was 1957. There was still a ferry to the Eastern Shore. There was no bridge tunnel there. And oh, by the way, I'm not exactly sure about this, but in my youth, I remember distinctly the toll on the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel was $1.25. We're talking the 60s now, $1.25. And it was extra if you had extra people. I think you got 2. And so people would always hide their children on the back floor so they didn't have to pay the extra dime or 2 to go through the toll. So that's part of my life growing up. There were 2 newspapers. There was a newspaper in Newport News in Hampton for the peninsula, and there was a newspaper in Norfolk for the South Side, and they didn't report each other's news. Phone calls from Norfolk across that river to Hampton or Newport News were long distance. Okay, think about that. So think what that means to a region, right? In 1957 or 1960 or even 1970. Think what that means to a region of 7 cities. Y'all think you got it bad here. We have 7 cities all next to each other, and they all want to be in charge. So 7 cities, a lot of other places, and just think what that does to that region. So all that's gone now, right? And the regional authorities come in. I was not a fan of the regional authorities. And I'll tell you why. Because I think the state should have raised the money that needed to be raised at the state, kept it at the state, and spent it state dollars with state dollars. That's what I thought. But that wasn't going to happen. And ultimately, my good friends on my side of the aisle were standing in the way of raising any money for transportation. And ultimately, the governor that appointed me to the board of the Transportation Board led an effort, because he was getting a lot of pressure from his folks in Hampton Roads. He led the effort to get the General Assembly to do a couple things, and one was to allow the regional authorities to get created. And so that was the only path forward. And we went from what we had before with no money to what you heard about, where we're leveraging $6 billion, $7 billion worth of projects, right? And the beauty of the whole thing, and it's like this everywhere, every part of the state, in both 3 regions. Nobody knows the taxes got raised. Like when we raised the sales tax in Hampton Roads, the Tea Party supported it. Nobody complained. Nobody knows. They don't really know, right? And so the point is, thank God we got them. But more importantly, and this is the point I was trying to make, I'm sorry I digress so long, but remember the region I described to you in Hampton Roads, and the sort of dysfunctionalism in the newspapers and the tolls and the lack of cohesiveness and collaboration And oh, by the way, Norfolk was hated by Virginia Beach because we held water over their heads for years. So all these things bubbling under the surface. Then we got some money that we needed to spend on transportation. Then all those people had to get in a room and they had to work together. And I've seen the same thing here. And it's been amazing. I mean, it has changed. The Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission has changed Hampton Roads. Not the TPO, with due respect, not the Planning District Commission, but when this group got money to spend on transportation, they had to cooperate, and they've done a magnificent job. And the real cool part is when I came to Richmond and I watched what was going on at CVTA and in the rest of the bodies, same thing's happening. And y'all like compromise and you trade and you work back and forth and you get stuff done. And everybody goes away happy, basically. Some people win a little bit more, but the next guy or gal will win a little bit more next time. And it's just been great to watch that. And it's just been fantastic. So it's not just about the money. It's not just about the transportation. It's about that cooperation that gets created, that work together, that collaboration that y'all were talking about earlier. It's key because it's not just on that. It's on the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. That has nothing to do with transportation. So I really have become a fan of the authorities because of that collaboration. But in any case, let me introduce somebody here this morning. I've got my new governor's intern fellow with us today, Clement Hurt. Clement, stand up, take a bow. Sean, Clement made the mistake of going to that school in Charlottesville that's got red and orange and blue, as opposed to the one further down that has garnet and gray at Hampton-Sydney. But well, and I do love Randolph-Macon until we're playing them. And November 10th isn't the right date. I think it'd be June 26th. You know what June 26th is? You failed the test. Bill Lighty, know June 26th? Chesty Puller's birthday. Hoorah. Chesty Puller's buried in my family's cemetery, same cemetery right next to Chesty. So. You mean to tell me Chesty Puller's dead? No, he's somewhere, wherever he is, right? Listen, so let me dive in here a little bit. The partnership aspect is what I've really been talking about, and the partnerships between you and the Commonwealth have really ensured the coordination around transportation improvements and projects that impact Richmond travelers every day. And oh, by the way, it's not Richmond travelers, it's just travelers, because everybody travels through here. Like you're the hub of the world, right? In Hampton Roads, you are. I mean, in Hampton Roads, we're at the cul-de-sac, as we call it, and you're the hub. And so we come here and then we go everywhere else. And the north-south 95 thing is huge, right? As the Youngkin administration approaches the 18-month mark, we believe our priorities are well known as a group, and I want to thank you for your continued partnership in accomplishing what we've done to date in the RVA region. As you know, we're very data-driven and laser-focused on quantifiable outcomes that make clear the services we provide to the general public is best in class. We strive to maximize the impact of outcomes from our transportation investments with a focus on delivering benefits for residents in everything we do. I think Mr. Lumpkins talked about safety. Somebody raised that. Big problem, right? That's our #1 priority in everything we do in transportation. Safety comes first, because it doesn't matter how fast you get there, it doesn't matter what the congestion is, it doesn't matter this, it doesn't matter that, if you don't get there. Doesn't matter. In 2021, we had 37,500 work zones on Virginia roads. These can be quite challenging for motorists to navigate with construction equipment, lane closures, and traffic pattern changes. It's important to remember that those are human lives behind these barrels and signs working to improve our highways. These are sons and daughters, husbands and wives, mothers and fathers of neighbors, coaches, and friends, all on a mission to keep Virginia moving. We recently celebrated Work Zone Awareness Week to honor employees and contractors who risk their lives to keep Virginians moving every day. Sadly, we also remember the 22 lives we lost in work zones last year. And let me say something about that. It's not just work zones, but work zones are a priority for us. We lose 1,000 people on these roads every year. 1,000 people die in Virginia roads every year, 1,000 people. And, you know, I don't know what that means to you, because we sort of see it one by one every day, two by two. You know, it's in Chatham, it's in Charlottesville, it's in Norfolk, it's in Berryville, and it just sort of happens, right? What would you do if 3 787 airliners with 300 people each, or 333 people each, crashed to the ground in Virginia every year? 3 of them, crash, gone, 1,000 people, year in, year out. What would we do? Do you think we'd just keep doing what we're doing? I don't think we would. And yeah, it is different, but it's still 1,000 people. And it really doesn't matter whether you're on an airplane or in a car. Dead is dead. Last week, within the last week, we had a contractor killed on the highway in Southwest Virginia, getting off their piece of construction equipment on the interstate. I just can't tell you. I mean, I look at them every day. I get a text whenever anything happens. And I look at it every day and I'm like, how can we stop this? How can we get ahead of this? And frankly, you know, I think VDOT does a pretty good job on safety projects. We can do better. We had we sort of did some systemic work, and then we're doing some spot work. But you can't engineer everything to make it 100% safe. It's not possible, right? When somebody does something stupid, I don't know how to engineer that out of the road without being unreasonable. I was driving down the highway the other day at 6 in the morning. It was dark on Route 17 in Middlesex County. And I was on the way to work, coming up from the weekend. And instantly, within 6 inches of the white line on the right side, I saw somebody like right there. And they were dressed in dark, and they were walking with their back to me down a 55-mile-an-hour highway, 6 inches from the road. And I thought, wow, what if I'd been 6 inches over? What if I just glanced to the left? Because it was like that, because it was dark and he was dark. Clothes were dark. I could have killed the guy. And he's walking along the road in dark clothes with his back to the traffic on a 55-mile-an-hour highway. How do you engineer that out? So I'm not going to go down the safety road much more, because I'll pick up my phone and I'll show that to you. We got to put the phones down, folks. We cannot text and drive, right? It's a big problem. So I would tell you that we're working really hard on the infrastructure side. We got to work on the people side. People are making dumb decisions. Second thing I'll say with that is we got to figure out the bike ped thing. It's not good. We pour more money into it. We put more bicyclists, more pedestrians in conflict with cars, and we haven't figured it out yet. And a little bicycle painted on the lane with a little stripe doesn't do you a damn bit of good when a car crosses it and hits you. And we've just got to do better. We got to figure this out. People don't understand how it works. They don't know what the rules are. Bicyclists sometimes don't follow the rules. People in cars don't follow the rules. And it's going to continue to happen until we have better education, we got a better system, and we have better enforcement. It's going to continue to happen, and we need to do something. Let's talk about some major projects. We got a lot of them, a lot of money being spent. $10 billion a year is what we spend in transportation. 10 billion, it's a lot. The major projects, I-66 outside the Beltway, the I-81 corridor improvement plan, which is another $2-3 billion plan. The Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel expansion, almost $4 billion. FredEx, the extension of the HOV hot lanes down to Fredericksburg, 495 next. That'll give you a sense of transportation projects in Virginia. 495 next. The northern extension, 2.5 miles, complicated 2.5 miles. Northern Virginia, flyovers, you know, transit, bike ped, all that stuff, complicated. $650 million. 2.5 miles. 2.5 miles. Okay. So challenges. in terms of that. Federal funding, we're all over the federal funding. As you know, the administration remains very focused on securing more than our share of the federal funding through the bipartisan infrastructure bill. We will get over $10 billion out of that. About half that's new money. There's old money as well in there, but $10 billion to help us move forward. We'll also have a $100 billion discretionary funding for projects. Or USDOT will have $100 billion discretionary, and that's what we're applying for now. So let me make one more shout out to y'all. Jennifer's here in the back. She's helped a lot of agencies apply. We want to help you. We'll help anybody in the state of Virginia with any project that they're applying for that bill. We will help, we will push, we will write letters. So if you have folks that still have opportunities there, please get us involved and let's help you. With the recent negotiations of the debt ceiling in Washington, the governor's federal affairs team is closely monitoring the impact of unallocated transportation funds. And we had about $70 million of funds that we had to work some magic with in the last 2 days. And Jennifer's team has got all hers squared away at DRPT. VDOT just obligated about $63 million of funds that could have been maybe clawed back, might have been. So we just put a nail in that and took that off the table. You know, and transportation is not just highways. It's not just trains. It's airports, it's DMV, right? It's the port, it's the spaceport. I got a spaceport to play with. I mean, that's the coolest thing in the world. I took some pictures of the control room after I got the job, and I showed them to some of my friends, and they said, "Do you have something to do with that?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Don't go in that room. Don't touch anything." And I swear to you, you got to go to Wallops. It looks like my memories of Apollo missions with these people standing in this room, you know, and doing what they do. And we're sitting there just glued to the TV watching them. It's exactly the same, except it's not a bunch of old white guys with crew cuts and little skinny ties anymore. It's a very diverse group. And it's really cool because we've got NASA, we've got the state of Virginia, and then we've got the launcher, you know, Northrop Grumman, Rocket Labs, these launch companies. And we all go in the same room and work together to launch rockets. It is the coolest thing in the world. But in any case, I digress. Let me talk about the Richmond Airport a little bit because they are on a roll. 3 years of reduced traffic due to COVID, got nothing on Richmond. They bounced back in an unprecedented fashion. Just this year, we've seen record months in March and April is their best to date. And May is on track to set an all-time record for the best month ever. Now, May's over. Did we make it or not? Is Perry Miller here today? Or if Perry's here, or somebody from the airport. But his team and the members of the Capital Region Airport Commission, many of whom may be with us today, have done a fantastic job positioning Richmond well for the restoration and expansion of air service routes to and from greater Richmond area. That's really important, folks. We're working with United, American, Breeze, Spirit every day to try to improve service in Virginia. In April, or for April 23, Richmond reports almost 400,000 passengers in April. It's the busiest April ever and a 12% increase over last year. Delta leads the pack with about 30% share. Americans close behind at 27, and then United at 13. A lot of cargo flowing through, a 29.4% increase for the month and an increase of 15.2% for the year. Aircraft operations increased 10.6% versus April. So it's up. It's busy and rolling. Due in large part to the success, new routes are opening at Richmond every month. May's inaugural route celebrations included Las Vegas on Spirit, Los Angeles, New York Islip, and Cincinnati all on Breeze, and Minneapolis, St. Paul on Sun Country. In June, Delta will restart the Minneapolis-St. Paul service. Scheduled seat capacity of May change from the previous year. So we've been very supportive of these air service developments through the governor's new Airline Service Incentive Fund, which we've used to great success to bolster airlines' marketing efforts, keeping these routes active for the long term. Not a Richmond thing, but close. Last week, we were up in DC celebrating with the German embassy folks for a new direct route from Dulles to Berlin. Lots of opportunity to get from Dulles to lots of places around the world, and it's going to grow. United's going to invest more money in that airport. We're going to be right behind them, and you're going to see a big expansion in Dulles in the coming years. The Richmond Marine Terminal, huge piece, very important piece of the Virginia port. It assumed operation 15 years ago as part of Virginia now, not just Richmond. And since then, years of hard work have rendered it one of the port's greatest success stories. In the 15 years, the port has moved nearly 300,000 containers, both imports and exports, through the Richmond Marine Terminal. This is an important number because those 300,000 containers would otherwise be going up and down the highway, 64, 95, 58, 460, and they're off that now. And let me tell you a little bit about that, and I'll be brief. They say, I've never really been able to substantiate this fully, but they say that the impact of a truck, a fully loaded, regularly loaded tractor trailer, in terms of the impact on the pavement and the degradation of the pavement, is 10,000 times a car. And people don't really argue with it. And we talked to our friends at Virginia Tech. So every truck equates to 10,000 cars on that piece of pavement. So understand what trucks and pavement mean to us. And the more we can get on the rail, the more we can get on the barge, the more we can get on the ship, it's a big impact to maintenance. The gap. Thank you all. Thank you. Newcat says thank you too. Yes, ma'am. You know, Norfolk to Richmond, that's my deal. 30-mile gap, there's a problem. We're getting it fixed. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you all so much. Your leadership was huge. I just have to tell you that. The leadership of the CVTA in the Richmond region was huge in getting this completed. And it brought the General Assembly with them, another huge move. And we're cobbling together the rest of it. It's going to happen. It's going to start this year, and it will be completed. And in about 4 years from now, we'll have a doubled bridge tunnel, 8 lanes, both directions, and at least 6 lanes all the way between the two regions. And we're going to close that gap in many ways. So thank you so much. Smart Scale. Some of y'all know about Smart Scale, and some of y'all know more about Smart Scale than others. We're in the process of looking at the factors right now. So the Transportation Board is hard at work, looking at factors and weightings and how the system works to try to make it better. I think there's uniform belief that it's a great system. We get nothing but praise. We get kudos across the nation for it. A metric-based, performance-based system that distributes transportation money. So different, Bill, than the way it used to work in Virginia. And so it's a great system. The question is it as good as it can be? And we think the answer is we can tweak it and make it better. So what I'm asking you to do is to weigh in. We've surveyed folks. We've asked for them to give us their opinions, but we're going to make a decision by the end of the year. And that will be what we'll use in the next round. So it's important to get the best result we can get. And I ask you to help us do that. Speaking of Smart Scale, last month, the Commonwealth Transportation Board voted to include the I-64 Ashland Road Interchange project in the Smart Scale consensus scenario, teeing the project up for full approval at our meeting this June. This $76 million project will reconstruct the existing Diamond Interchange into a 4-lane divergent Diamond Interchange, requiring a new 2-lane bridge over I-64 and additional traffic signals. That's all good, but that's all about an economic development project that could be really profound for the Commonwealth and for Goochland and for the Richmond area. And so when we first looked at this, we didn't have any way to get there. And I have to say this, I don't think he's here today. Is Carlos here? Carlos is not here. I- Carlos Brown has been an excellent member of the Transportation Board. I think we need to give him a round of applause. You know, so I'm a Republican, Carlos is a Democrat. Carlos is from Richmond, I'm from Norfolk. We served on the board together. I didn't serve with anybody better than him ever. He's been fantastic. And he's smart, he gets it done, he's polite, he's civil, he's cordial, he works it, and he gets it done. And he had a lot to do with getting that Goochland project done. And so I'm really disappointed to lose him. He'll be rotating off here in the next month. And I'm searching for, and we've got some good candidates, but I'm searching for a good replacement. You know, I don't know, Carlos has been exceptional, I have to tell you. But so to the extent that y'all have some thoughts on that, please get them into me immediately, because I'm in that process now, and we're going to be making some appointments. So the Richmond District member will be appointed by the end of this month. And I'm trying to make sure we get the very best person we can get. Jennifer's here, so let me say a couple things about rail. So as you know, the Department of Rail and Public Transportation has transit and it has rail, and the transit is more of a planning body and a coordinating body and a flow-through body, and the rail is sort of similar, but they're separated right now. We now have Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, and by virtue of her being the director of DRPT, Jennifer is the chairman of the board of Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. That's all a long way to say it, a long way to go. A lot of stuff to say what I'm trying to say, which is the passenger rail is on a roll in Virginia. And the work that Jennifer and her team did to re-envision passenger rail a few years ago has been outstanding. Amtrak is setting records every month. So people are getting on the rails and riding. What's not working so well is commuter rail. So WMATA still is challenged. VRE is still very challenged. There's a lot of state money that goes in there, a lot of your money, a lot of my money. So we're trying to figure that out. What's it really going to look like, right? What is work going to look like in the DC area? When nobody goes to work in the office buildings, and it's not nobody, but when nobody goes to work in the office buildings, they're not commuters. There's nobody to get on WMATA trains. There's nobody to get on VRE. But can they work differently? And they're morphing and changing to that. We got a lot of challenges there, but I will tell you that rail's on a roll, and Jennifer and her team have done an excellent job. We'll be working on the rest of them. And listen, I'm sorry to be sort of disjointed here this morning, but I wanted to jump in on a couple of things that I thought were important. So let me leave you with two thoughts. One is y'all are doing an outstanding job. Keep it up. It not only helps for transportation, it helps for everything that goes on in the Richmond region, the cooperation. Number two, we got more money in transportation than ever. We want to spend it really wisely. We need your help. Number three, looking for a new board member. Got some really great candidates, but always looking for more. So please feed those in if you haven't. Appreciate y'all having me here today. Willing to take any questions if you have them, and thanks for what you do, and be safe.
Is there a question for the secretary?
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Secretary Miller. We really appreciate you being with us this morning, and that was a wonderful update, so really appreciate it. We wanted to be able to sort of tee up the rest of the morning to be able to talk about kind of why we do this work. And so I'm really pleased to be able to introduce you to Chris Lloyd. He leads the McGuire Woods Consulting Infrastructure and Economic Development team. And I asked Chris to come and just sort of talk about what he sees in his daily work. He specializes in site selection and economic development incentive negotiations. And I thought it would be interesting for him to share with us a little bit about what we're doing here that makes his job easier. So We wanted to be able to talk a little bit about how he works with numerous public-private partnerships for transportation and other infrastructure, and having played the lead role in a lot of development of some of the public-private partnership laws in the Commonwealth, we thought that it would be interesting to hear his perspective. As I said, Chris is leading this team at McGuire Woods. Prior to that, he served for nearly 5 years in the Office of Secretary of Commerce and Trade under Virginia Governors Allen and Wilder. And he was responsible then for legislative, budgetary, and regulatory coordination. I know we're throwing around a lot of colleges and universities today, but I think that the most important part of his introduction is that he was graduated from the College of William and Mary. So glad to have you, and we really appreciate you being here. We've already got it. Great, thank you.
Let's see here. Thanks, Martha. We'll go ahead and tee this up. So really is a pleasure to be with you all this morning to talk a little bit about, I think the reason really Martha wanted me to be here is because without a strong and growing economy, all this group wants to accomplish for the citizens of the region is very hard to do. I get to travel around the country seeing a lot of communities, and I get to see a lot of vibrant ones, and I get to see a lot of ones that are dying. And a lot of reason they're dying is because, of course, economic trends have not gone their way, but also a lack of regional cooperation. And I think that's the strength of this region and why I think we see great things going on in Richmond, but we can always do better. So what I do in my professional role is I'm a site selector. That means I'm hired by companies around the country as they're deciding where they're going to build factories, where they're going to move offices, where they're going to close offices. And I help them decide from a regulatory perspective, from a tax perspective, from a logistics perspective, where they should go. Just by way of example, 2 weeks ago, I had a project announced in Pennsylvania. Last week, I was in Connecticut most of the week. I'll be in St. Louis and Charleston, South Carolina the week after next. So I'm moving around a lot of territory. And it's a really exciting time to be in economic development. And particularly to watch it unfold here in my home market. The great thing about Richmond is we've got a lot of assets, and I'm going to talk about those and how those are perceived nationally by clients like the ones we have or other site selectors. The problem with Richmond, and we've got a lot of good things, the problem with Richmond is a lot of people haven't been to Richmond. We're not on the hit parade for a lot of people. Everybody knows New York, everybody knows Austin, everybody knows Nashville, they've been to Salt Lake. They've been to other cities. Richmond's just not somewhere that a lot of people have exposure to. And so it is the job of the people in this room and every person in Richmond to tell the Richmond story, to let people know what's going on and what's great about the great things that are going on in Richmond. And then people ask me, okay, well, maybe I've not been to Richmond, but tell me which Richmond's like and which Richmond's economy is like. And I say, again, we're not Nashville, we're not Austin, but we're doing really well in Richmond. And to put it in perspective, usually the story I tell is I go back to 2008. And think about 2008 in Richmond. And in the course of a couple of months, we lost Circuit City, completely evaporated off the face of the earth. We lost Cumonda, the semiconductor plant, and we lost Land of America. And the Richmond economy never stopped going. Most cities that would have wiped them off, or certainly would have set them back a decade. And Richmond just kept plugging away. And that's what's the great thing about Richmond, is we do have a diverse economy. We have people that want to see this place succeed. It doesn't mean we're perfect, but we've got a lot of great things going. So with that, let me talk a little bit about some of the what as a site selector and kind of what it's driving site selection decisions right now. The first one is that this is a relationship-based business. All the highways, all the tax policies, all the regulatory policies don't mean anything if you are not out there as elected officials and appointed officials building relationships with key decision makers and with the people of this community to tell others about how great Richmond is. People are coming through this community all the time, and they're making decisions based on their interaction at a restaurant, with their cab driver, with the person at the hotel desk, with what they read in the newspaper and what they see on the news when they're sitting in their hotel room at night. And if they hear bad things from that cab driver, they hear things that this is a disjointed community, or they turn on the news and all they see is fighting and arguing, they're going to have a really bad perception of Richmond, because this is a relationship business and it is one that's built on trust. Second, companies make location decisions not because they're charities. Think about it for a minute. Wall Street rewards companies for firing people. Stock goes up when Amazon lays off people. Stock goes off when Facebook lays off people. Companies make decisions because they've got a problem that needs to be solved. So they are looking for someone who's going to be their partner to help them solve that problem. So if you enter into economic development and grow an economy with that problem-solving solutions orientation, you're going to be much better off. Companies make decisions, not industries. You know, we say, oh, we want to be a logistics hub or we want to be a life science hub. It's not about attracting the entire industry. It's about winning company by company or growing the companies that are in the market. That is absolutely essential. I've got a couple other points here, but I'll move more quickly through them. One of them that I want to really leave y'all with is that incentives don't make a bad deal good. And Virginia is not a big incentive state. Incentives can help. And we've seen some states buy deals, and it has been transformational for those states. Think about South Carolina when they won BMW in the 1990s. That changed the trajectory of the upstate of South Carolina. Greenville and Spartanburg were on a death spiral because all the textiles had moved out until BMW was bought by South Carolina, and it changed the trajectory of that community. But that's very rare. There's more instances of a lot of communities that have bought deals, and it's been an economic disaster for them. So again, I'd want to leave you with that. How site selection is evolving. Speed to market is absolutely essential, and that is within the control of every person within this room, of how fast you get projects through the approval process. And a lot of that is driven because of what's going on with inflation right now. We have a client right now who's building a warehouse in St. Louis. They're building the exact same, they built the exact same one 2 years ago. It's the one that's under construction, Performance Food Group, the one in Hanover. The bids in St. Louis are coming in at twice the cost. And it's not because of anything special to St. Louis. It's just because of inflation. So if that project is delayed a month on a $100 million project, that costs the company millions of dollars. So what you as local government or leaders can do to speed that process along, augment the resources to make sure that people get through the permitting process quickly while still following the law is absolutely important. Projects are becoming much more capital intensive, fewer jobs, more automation, and that's only going to increase. And we have a tax structure in Virginia that's built for the 19th century that is built upon taxing property. We have a system that disincentivizes companies from investing in equipment. We've got to figure that out. Deals are becoming much more complex, and deals are changing. You know, people think of economic development as whale hunting, smokestack chasing, whatever you want to call it. Deals are very much evolving and changing. And the needs of these projects and what they require from an infrastructure perspective, what they require from a permitting perspective, what they have from a workforce perspective is changing radically and daily. The office market is also changing. It is not dead, but it is evolving. And it's going to require a lot of new approaches to zoning and planning. What I'm telling people, and what I'm hearing from my colleagues in the site consultant world, is that the era of the suburban office park is coming to an end. The 2- and 3-story buildings surrounded by hundreds of acres of parking is coming to an end, folks. And the best thing you can do as a community, literally, particularly if it's Class B space, is blow it up. Because that is dead. But blowing it up doesn't mean you abandon it. Look at what's going on in Henrico with Innsbruck, how that's being transformed into a live, work, play community. Look at other similar developments across this region about how we're transforming them into full 18-hour, 24-hour communities. That is what forward thinking requires. And a lot of communities haven't figured that out because they think, oh, you know, people are going to come back to the office. They are going to come back to the office, but they're going to come back to a different office than one that they went to. And they want to be able to walk to places. They want to have restaurants. They want to have entertainment around it. And until we change our zoning codes and planning thinking to accommodate that, we're going to have a real problem. The war for talent is very, very real in this country. Companies are relocating to follow where workers are going, not the other way around. And if you've been to Austin or you've been to Nashville lately, the traffic's terrible, the cost of living is out of control, but people keep coming because they find those to be attractive communities, and companies continue to follow them. And so we need to make sure that we are doing things to attract workers to this community, because then the economic growth will happen. I've already talked about tax and credits of incentives as being less important to motivating corporate behavior, but also something that we didn't see just a few years ago in site selection is the importance of childcare, affordable childcare and affordable housing in corporate decision-making. Clients never, ever used to ask about that. And what y'all can do to structure public-private partnerships with companies, with service providers, to provide more affordable childcare and more affordable housing is going to absolutely make the difference in whether Richmond succeeds or not, because that's what companies need. It's not just about roads. It's not just about incentives. Those topics are very, very important and becoming increasingly so. So now I want to give you a little bit of a quick look into my side of the world and how we evaluate sites. I don't have it filled out. This is just the template. But when we're evaluating a community, it's these kind of characteristics we're looking at. So we've got multiple sites in multiple states, and we've created various criteria based on what's a driver for that project. And we rank them on using very objective factors. And you can look at these categories and you think, actually, Richmond stacks up pretty well in many of these categories. Think about our road access. Think about our labor cost and our availability of labor. Think about our utility costs compared to other places. We have fairly good environmental permitting, a good collaboration between the state and local communities about that. We've got some challenges on tax structure, incentives we do okay with. So Richmond really stacks up pretty well. But then you think about, that's kind of the initial screen. But as you get, that funnel starts to get much more narrow. You think about some of the other factors that come into play and think about where Richmond plays in these. Quality of life becomes ever more important as that decision gets closer and closer as the CEO, as she's deciding where she's going to take that community or that company. Quality of life issues, recreational opportunities, parks, entertainment venues, all become increasingly important and more important than some of those objective factors I talked about earlier. And Richmond's made great strides in that. I grew up in this town. I remember Richmond was a very closed society growing up. And Richmond has changed and evolving, and Richmond really has a cool hip factor that didn't exist when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s. The availability of affordable housing and different types of housing options all across this region. Those are going to be considered. When we're looking at a community on behalf of a client, we go on a regional tour and we drive in and we look at neighborhoods and we look at to see what the options are and opportunities are out there for housing. Airport access and the costs. I'm glad the Secretary talked about the great availability of what's growing and happening at the Richmond Airport. Of those 400,000 passengers that went through last month, I think I was this person 50 of those times. But you know, Richmond's made great strides with regards to airport access and cost. K-12 education quality, variety, and choice are all extremely important for corporate executives when they're deciding where to go. The opportunity for university and other research partnerships. Think about the opportunities to work with VCU, with Virginia State, with Virginia Union, with University of Richmond, with our community college system, and how important that is to companies. The responsiveness of the workforce training system to the needs of business is paramount. And that's where a lot of communities mess up, where you have the education system and the businesses system are just two ships passing in the night. They never talk to each other. There's a survey that was done by the state legislative watchdog, JLARC, a few years ago that looked at Virginia's career and technical education system. And they surveyed all of Virginia's high schools, and they found that 67 Virginia high schools provide training in healthcare, which is great because healthcare is a sixth of the US economy. They found that 240 Virginia high schools had training in fashion design. Last time Virginia was fashionable was the 1760s, folks. And so, you know, there was just no communication that was happening between, essentially, the career technical education system was asking kids what they wanted to learn instead of going to businesses and saying, what do you need in order to have a talent pipeline going forward? And again, I come back to speed to market is absolutely critical. What are some of the neat areas for improvement for this region as I conclude this very quickly? First and foremost, the need for more shovel-ready sites for industrial and office projects. Yes, Lego was great and a wonderful success story for this entire region. But think about it for a minute. If you've read the paper in the last 48 hours, Hyundai announced its second plant in Georgia. And Toyota doubled the size of the operation they're going to build outside of Greensboro. Virginia's missing out on a lot of projects just because not only do we not have mega sites, we just don't have sites. And thankfully, some of the communities in this area are starting to figure that out. And we're seeing investments in every community in that, but we still don't have enough. And if you don't have product, you're not going to get prospects. And this is where this region needs to come together and work with the state and work together to have more assets to show companies so that Richmond is seeing people moving to this region. But if you don't have places to put those companies, we're not going to see the economic success that comes with that. Second, this region, we need to watch out for increased NIMBYism and activism. Need I say the Wegmans case? Need I say the FOIA cases coming out of Suffolk and Fairfax where people are challenging zoning decisions? Need I say all the decisions where you've got now Prince William, Orange, Warrenton, all under massive litigation because of challenging data centers? There is big money, national money funneling into activist organizations to block economic development and development projects. And it is going to require a lot of political courage and a lot of citizen education to make sure that we don't fall victim to that in this community. We need to enhance collaboration on workforce development and talent pipeline, that making sure those two ships are not passing in the night. And we're very lucky in Virginia. We've got a new chancellor, our community college system here in Virginia. I met with Dr. Doria a couple of weeks ago, and he comes from Arizona, which I think has the finest community college system in the country. Extremely responsive to the needs of business. And I think if he's got a vision for taking Virginia to the next level, and we need to make sure that that is not only at our community college system, but our four-year institutions and our K-12 system. And it's not to say that we're going to track students the way the Germans do, but to make sure that the needs of business are reflected in our curriculum and education. And finally, we need to figure out a way to modernize our state and local tax structure. Because if we're going to have a system that is disincentivizing investment and capital investment at a time when capital investment is increasing, that is not good for Virginia. We need to figure out a way. We've got other states that are reducing taxes compared to Virginia. That is an issue that we've got to think about. And I'm not suggesting one solution or another, but we have got to modernize and relook at our entire system from top to bottom. And I know that's not easy, and I know it's not hard. It's not something that you can do overnight. But if we don't, I was just, like I said, I had a project announced in Pennsylvania a couple weeks ago. They've cut their corporate income tax rate in half. Other states are eliminating their machinery and tools taxes. Other states are lowering their personal income taxes. And yes, that's not easy to do. But if we don't, we're going to get left behind. And with that, I appreciate it very much.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thanks, Mark.
Really appreciate you being here. Thank you. Well, that was quite the call to action, I think. But we did want to wrap up this morning with some celebration. So thank you all for sticking with us. We are running just about 4 minutes behind schedule, so we're not going to keep you too long, but I hope that you will stay and to walk with me through these celebrations. So I do want to ask Bill Lawson and Darshan Parikh to come up to the front. And Steve Nelson, if you're here also, appreciate that. Earlier this year, those of you that serve on the commission board know that our Emergency Management Alliance gives an annual presentation about the work that this phenomenal group of emergency management professionals do in our region. And so I won't ask them to reiterate that presentation, but it was that briefing was an excellent reminder of all of the work that happens behind the scenes to keep our region safe from the imminency or the risk of potential crises in our region. So I'm just really pleased this morning to introduce Bill Lawson. He's our vice chair of the Central Virginia Emergency Management Alliance. And we'll turn it over to you, Bill, to make some remarks and give a special recognition.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna do one of those because I like to stand and talk. Again, I'm Bill Lawson. So I'm with the Office of Emergency Management here in the city of Richmond, and then also the vice chair for the Emergency Management Alliance of Central Virginia. We like calling it the Alliance. It makes it sound like we're Marvel characters or something. But Darshan and I were sitting in the back here touching base about some of the same struggles and things that we all seem to talk about. Some of the regional cooperation, some of the regional projects that we work on, and then some of the people and staff that we have. So Darshan, you want to talk to me about that?
Sure. So speaking on the topics of regional cooperation and mutualism, because at the end of the day, our stakeholders, our community members, they really do demand that service from us. Everything that we do in the Alliance is it's done in a cooperative manner through our subcommittees and general work groups. We have 5 subcommittees spanning areas like training and exercise, mass care, public outreach, and some more. And they really do have tangible benefits and outcomes that the community can use for good. For example, when you all leave today, or if you take a break at some point, parked out right out front is a training and exercise trailer that we purchased using federal funds. It was purchased using federal funds, but all of the work on it and all of the purchasing for it and the organization, everything was done by members of the Alliance. And that's a resource that can be used for exercises, training, and real-world incident response in the community. And that's just one example. We have many, many more.
We hadn't gotten it wrapped yet, so it's just plain white trailer, unfortunately. Oh well, next week. So the other thing that we wanted to do is we have the Virginia Emergency Management Association for the state, and they offer awards and recognition. So we had actually submitted one for Stephen Nelson. He won the new Outstanding Emergency Management Professional Award. Part of what Stephen does as a tribal emergency manager with the Rappahannock tribe, he's built their emergency operations center up, emergency operations plan. He's worked on the mitigation plan for their region. Basically just has dove in and worked to try to bring the tribe up to where they need to be from an emergency management perspective. And then regionally, he's done a lot of work with us on participating with that mass care and human services, some of the planning, the training and exercise, and then you all probably have in some of your communities volunteers, community emergency response team. He's trying to work on creating that for the tribal community there as well. And really has brought another perspective to us and has been our first tribal representative on our executive team for the Alliance. So with that, we just want to recognize that he was awarded the new Outstanding Emergency Management Professional Award from the state for this year. So thanks. Thank you very much. You say anything to say? Do this first. And I'll give you that one.
I just want to express my appreciation for all the support I've been receiving from Plan RVA and the Alliance. I was a new transplant here into the region 2 years ago, and tasked with starting a new emergency management department for our native tribe in Virginia. And it's been quite the ride, and I'm really thankful to have the support that I've been receiving. It's been integral in advancing our efforts. So thank you all very much.
Well, on behalf of the Alliance, thank you all very much for inviting us here. And like I said, we look forward to working and coordinating with your groups in the future. So thank you.
Do you want me to do it? Thank you. In 2022 and 2023, Plan RVA was recognized on the state and national stage for outstanding work in regional planning by the Virginia Association of Planning District Commissions and the National Association of Development Organizations for its work to support the Emergency Management Alliance of Central Virginia in founding the COVID-19 Emergency Response Fund. Sid's going to queue up a video, but I'm pleased to share that the work to recognize this event was debuted earlier this year at the Community Foundation for their annual meeting. So we'll share that with you right now. I came to this region in December of 2015, and from the moment I started, our regional emergency management coordinator at the time always talked to me about the importance of having the resources lined up before we need them in the event of a disaster. And so as I started to make my connections in the community and start to understand the partners and the players, I had the opportunity to pitch this idea to the Community Foundation to talk about what it could look like for Plan RVA, the Regional Emergency Management Alliance of Central Virginia, and the Community Foundation to come together to establish a fund in the event we might need it for a disaster. We established the fund in 2018 with no need identified. And again, our fingers crossed that we wouldn't need it. And then of course, I think everyone remembers March of 2020.
Waymaker started as a call for help for the community. Through COVID, We heard about what was going on. We understood that we were going through a pandemic, but it really didn't make sense until it touched home. And then we started receiving phone calls in reference to, we need to know where we can get assistance. And I'm like, well, what type of assistance are you looking for? And families will say, food.
A lot of the conversation was around food security. But so many of the resources that fund those programs are very strict in how they must operate. So if there's a meal service during schools, the funding is there to be able to provide meals in schools. Well, what happens when there are no students in school? And so we had to start thinking about how to use this fund to be able to meet the practical needs of our residents and not the institutional needs of how we've historically delivered things.
I went out and I started just doing grocery shopping. I remember that what I was doing before to help out was just doing Kroger and Instacart and having things delivered to some families that would say they need rice, milk, cereal, more common stuff, right? And that's how Waymaker started. I had no idea of what it was or what would happen in Richmond in reference to collaboration or anything like that. During that time, I remember that through OIDE in the city of Richmond, Carla Ramos, she contacted to assist me and guide me and mentor me of the work that I was doing with the community. And she said, well, there is COVID funds.
We had about $7 million contributed across the country. It was a year-long effort of evaluation and distribution. It was rapid fire application, and there were hundreds of organizations across the region, local governments, nonprofits, community-based organizations, all linking arms, really, to be able to make these dollars go as far as they possibly could.
That was the first grant ever received for Waymakers Foundation. That opened doors because now that we are into our third year, we know what it is to be able to have a relationship with someone who believed in our work, to be able to continue to get funded, because it's sure not an easy process. We are currently serving about 1,700 families a month. We are coming from another land, coming here to build a dream, but we don't know the challenges that we're going to face.
I think everybody that has been a part of this effort recognized very early on that we could not have done this individually. It just wouldn't have worked without the expertise of everyone sitting around the table. It really gives me a lot of confidence that our community knows how to step up when we need to.
Thank you. We've had a slight agenda change because we have some folks that have schedules. And interestingly enough, this happens from time to time, even with our commission. We sometimes have to be fluid because folks have additional duties in other places. But I'm going to ask Ms. O'Bannon, I think she's still, there she is. Pat, please come forward. And Mr. Lumpkins, Chair Lumpkins. So we have a number of people who have chosen their service to the PDC will conclude, and I don't think their service to the region will conclude, but folks that will no longer serve in capacity in an elected office that they're in now. And I just want to recount quickly, my first TPO meeting, I sat beside Frank Thornton, and a few chairs down, Ms. O'Bannon was there, and at the time, Manny Tavares represented Goochland, and there was a particular issue that I won't rehash, and I think Manny wishes that he hadn't brought it up. But Pat jumped dead down Manny's throat and said, this just simply isn't going to happen. And Manny kept working and working. And I think we kind of took a break in the middle of the meeting, and a bunch of us coalesced around Manny and said, Manny, let it go. Just let it go. So they decided to have a study. And the next meeting, Ms. O'Bannon walked in with about 9/10 of Henrico County government behind her. I always said, looked a little bit like Tony Soprano walking in. And I think Manny knew at that point it was over, but she was advocating and fighting for her constituents, and it impressed upon the rest of us where we needed to go in supporting Henrico County. And I remember that. And as things were going on and I was kind of watching this tennis match, Mr. Thornton just reached over, had my hands on the table. Mr. Thornton said not a word, reached over and patted me on my hand. He said, it'll be over soon. I said, okay. That's all he said. That's all he said. And then for John, I mean, John and I, we've met for lunch. We've talked about things. We've talked about how we run meetings, how we get our folks to get on board. And as an attorney, you're well-versed in having to negotiate and sometimes leaving a room where
neither party's happy, and sometimes one's a little happier than the other. The secretary mentioned that. But your leadership in any capacity that I've worked with you has just been phenomenal. The way you deal with folks, your collegiality, but you're direct and you get your point across and you guide your board in a way that many people can't, particularly when it comes to region. So we just wanted to recognize those folks. Martha, do I have those things? They're on the way? Yeah, okay, so anyway, we'll work on that later. I want to recognize Sid for his last day at Plan RVA. Sid, we appreciate your service. Get yourself a small plaque while you're at it. But I will tell you this, these organizations run because of folks like this, and they do. And many of y'all know we have a number of people who are not seeking office in a lot of our regional boards that will come off of these regional bodies. And they will be missed. I believe that they have prepared the leadership that's going to come in to serve. And I think that that's important. I think true leaders do that. They prepare, whether it's the next generation or the next cycle. We don't get a choice in that sometimes. So on behalf of the entire commission and on behalf of the region, we just want to thank both of y'all for your leadership. It's not been unnoticed, and y'all have accomplished a lot of great things. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Feel free to say something. You have anything to say?
I know a lot of people who attend the meetings often wonder why I asked a lot of questions. It was usually because I looked around the room and people who obviously couldn't follow it, didn't know what the words meant, all the acronyms. So this is the place for acronyms. So I would ask a pointed question, and then I noticed everybody was listening. In other words, they didn't get it either, or I knew what they were thinking. So it wasn't just to make the meetings longer. It was to make sure everybody understood what was being said, because there are a lot of acronyms. And I wanted to also say to Patricia Page, I want her to remember that I'm the one that sent her to the Commonwealth Transportation Board. Remember that? Okay. And I even told you where the next meeting was. And you showed up. Okay.
Well, no, thank you. I'm very humbled to be standing up here with you for all your years of service. But you've been integral on the TPO along with the rest of the board, really engaged board. And I think I'll have an opportunity to touch on that engagement in a few minutes. But I'm really humbled. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you both.
Now I'll introduce David Blunt and Dwayne Tuggle. David Blunt is the Executive Director of the Virginia Association of Planning District Commissions, and Dwayne is our first Vice President. And they're here today, have both traveled from what they call Central Virginia to be here to make a very, very special presentation.
By the way, Amherst is Central Virginia. It's kind of almost right in the middle. All right, we're here today to recognize Delegate McQuinn. She has been a member of the House of Delegates since 2009, and throughout your tenure, you have supported and promoted legislation that supports effective planning at both the regional and the local levels. You are also a previous sponsor of a budget amendment requested by VAPDC to secure nearly $300,000 in additional state funding for PDCs. That's to increase each PDC funding by about approximately $14,000 a year. A request that was approved in the 2021 General Assembly. You are also a sponsor of legislation that created the Central Virginia Transportation Authority in 2020. And initially served the House of Delegates representative on the authority. This is just another example of what you've done for our community and our region. Delegate McQuinn, you have been a leader in the House of Delegates, the Richmond region, and across our Commonwealth. VAPDC is pleased to announce and present you with the 2023 Legislator of the Year Award.
Thank you so much for this recognition, and to those, the other individuals who have been honored today. Congratulations to you. You know, this is, Richmond is my home. I always tell folks I'm Richmond born, Richmond bred, and will be in Richmond when I'm dead, okay? But I know in serving in various capacity over the years that the element that brings forth transformational changes is regional cooperation for everyone. There are invisible lines from one place to another, but many people don't know those invisible lines are there. And so what affects one affects the others. And so it is my honor. Thank you so much for this recognition. And again, I'm humbled by it. I do whatever I do because it's the right thing to do. God bless and thank you again.
We have two additional award announcements, one from the CBTA and one from the RRTPO. Mr. Carroll, do you want to make that announcement? I know we're a little different than we planned.
I think the secretary said it best that Carlos Brown served on the CBTA representing the CTB from its inception. And quite frankly, we all know that he had a lot to do with the work in creating the CBTA in the first place. And so knowing that he's coming off in the next month or so, the CBTA will be, hopefully get him here in person, we'll be presenting him with a momentum, an award on behalf of the CBTA members for his excellent service. So very good.
This is still working here. Okay, all right, there we go. David Williams, will you come forward, please? He's surprised. And Dr. Newbill, I don't think she could join us. Miss Jordan, would you mind coming up and accepting, or either one of you, Mr. Addison? David has a look of concern. He's like, what is this about?
I have a look of concern myself.
I mentioned a couple of things. I mentioned in the panel the great cooperation and the great engagement of the policy board. And last month, that little intro that I talked about, I saved the best for last. In Goochland, we did our little intro at the beginning of last month's meeting. And our county administrator joined us, and we rode together. And when we left here, his first words were, "That's a very engaged board that you're chairing there." And that is the truth. That's the way it's always been. And that's what we've been talking about today. So it's hard to identify somebody that's even going above and beyond the normal engagement. But I also mentioned on the panel about focused on cost overruns and really drilling down to that. Well, Mr. Williams and Dr. Newbill were the leaders in that, and they really impressed all of the policy board. We came to one meeting a few months ago, and Chet Parsons was telling us how two of your members actually came down here and spent a day digging into this issue of cost overruns, and the rest of us were looking around, all right, who are the overachievers? And I know, looked right at him because he's one of those ones that raises his hand during the meetings and is engaged. And Dr. Newbill is very focused on this. So we have a Leadership Through Education award that we want to recognize you. And if you can accept the award on Dr. Newbill's behalf, Leadership Through Education, going above and beyond and really digging in to the challenge that really you were a leader on this 8 or 9 months ago, focusing on it. And you and Dr. Newbill really helped the policy board by going above and beyond and digging in to the issue and leading us to a good solution, which will, at least a solution that we'll see how it works out. But it was a solution that we adopted last month. So I think, see, Carrie, here we go. All right. That's the one for you. I guess oh, here we go. Here's the other. Yeah, that's good. And thank you. You'll deliver that to Dr. Newbill. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, David. All right, thanks.
And our final recognition is extremely important. And many of y'all remember Jen Lee. By a show of hands, who remembers Jen? Right. So Jen was here almost 35 years, 34 years serving with the PDC, and just saw all kinds of changes, people coming and going. So we created an award last year, and it was kind of anticlimactic because of Jen's personality. It's like, we've got the award. He kind of came in and was like, okay, did he even, yeah, he didn't even show up for the meeting. He was like, thanks for naming it after me, but he was a quiet force. And so we have started, this will be the inaugural year, recognizing employees. And the important part about staff is this: when boards leave this room, they give a lot of directives, and we've talked about deliverables. Those don't happen until those doors open and staff goes back and starts digging the ditches that the board's mandated, right? And I've talked to staff over and over at different events and said, in reality, in Hanover, you have about 110,000 people that you work for, right? And then in Chesterfield, and then in the city. So we've got a bunch of people that are out there in these localities that you're delivering things to, that don't know who we are, certainly don't know who you are, but they know the impact of what you do. And so it's important for us. Our staff has really coalesced around delivering the mandates of what we call our joint constituency. So I'm pleased to present the inaugural award recognizing staff at Plan RVA. This award was established at last year's annual meeting in honor of Jen Lee, who served the region as a staff member of the RRPDC for 34 years. The Plan RVA Staff Member of the Year Award is given in his name to employees who embody the qualities of dedicated professionalism, who set a standard of public service, and have the qualities of performance and kindness. Today, I'm thrilled to recognize an employee who was nominated several times by peers for this particular recognition. The employee was described as a powerhouse when it comes to program expansion and managing workload. And for the board members in here, those were key terms and key initiatives that you mandated. Adaptive and empowering, this employee provides quality advice and supports all members of our team. This employee is kind and thoughtful, a great colleague who generously shares their knowledge and skills to aid others, fully embodying the spirit of this recognition. One nomination came in and said of this employee is one of those people who feels irreplaceable, and went further to say, quote, "I'm not sure I'd be as excited to come to work each day if I didn't have this person as my manager." That speaks. I don't think they said that about the chair, so that's interesting. With that, she is one of the employees who makes work fun. She gets things done for sure. She lights up every room and brings substance and care to everything she does. Interestingly enough, I was just notified that today is this employee's 16th work anniversary on this very day. So I'm pleased to announce Sarah Stewart as the Plan RVA Employee of the Year.
Oh my gosh.
You didn't know? Look at that.
Wow. Wait, I should speak in the microphone.
You should speak wherever you want to.
This is, I love the people I work with. I love the projects I work on, and there's so much more to do. Like, wow, oh my God. I'm kind of floored, I'm almost speechless. This is maybe not like me. No, but really, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh my gosh.
So any surprises on that, right? For those who just, right? So do we have any member comments or announcements? Any other business? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, the time is 11:08. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.